And welcome to this edition of Mid-South Viewpoint. Hi, I'm Byron Tyler. Pleasure to get together as always with our Bot Radio Network listeners, whether you're listening in the Memphis and Mid-South area or via the online stream that we provide or catching one of our videos on YouTube or Facebook. It's always great to get together with our listeners and share about the kingdom work that God's up to, whether it be here in Memphis or in New York State, which we want to take you today. I just first want to say special thanks to my good friend, Steve Markham, who's the missions pastor at Bellevue Baptist Church. This week, as we record our program, Bellevue is in their annual missions conference. And it's always an exciting conference. They have missionaries that come from all over the world and take part in this week and share their work, and many that the church is supporting. And it's exciting just to get these missionaries in and, up close and personal and get a chance to meet them. Many churches today, I don't know if about their missions programs, but oftentimes you don't actually see a face, a missionary, at a church as much as you did when I was younger. But it's great to have these missionaries and their families that are serving our Christ to come and to meet them. And today we got the privilege. I called Steve and I said, hey, have you got anybody that might be willing to come on a last minute note? This was just yesterday. I called last night and Steve said, I've got a couple of people I think you need to meet. So today we're going to record the shows and we're bringing it live right now to our YouTube listeners and viewers. But then we'll be airing these programs real soon on AM 640 and FM 100.7. But Derek Duncan is the lead pastor at Living Water Church up in LaGrangeville, New York. And he's a homeboy. He knows what Memphis barbecue is all about.
Memphis barbecue.
He knows it. The only thing that some people might have a little issue with is the fact that he went to Ole Miss.
Yes. Yes, I did.
Hey, Derek, it's good to have you in here today. And when did you get in town?
We just arrived back in town on Wednesday afternoon.
Okay.
So my wife and I came back for the missions conference, and it's just always good to come back home.
Now, you and your wife, Dana, are both from this area, right?
Well, Dana moved here from Indiana back in college, and we met while I was going to Ole Miss, and she was going to Memphis, University of Memphis State back in the day. And we got married and lived in Memphis all my life up until about 10 years ago.
Okay. Talk about backstory of growing up in Memphis, what your dad did, family?
Raised in church, as far back as I know, Christians and my parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, and we were very involved in church growing up. And after I got out of college, we were going to Witten Memorial Baptist Church over off of Macon Road is where I grew up.
Now, is that when Jack May was pastor?
No, that was before that.
That was before Jack.
J.E. Tanksley was my pastor,
okay.
And many people probably know him.
Yes. I guess Jack was kind of interim later, though. That's right.
Yep. Yeah. And so we were there and just really, growing and learning in our walk with God. And my wife was saved there, and I was saved there as a young boy. And then we ended up going to Bellevue later on. And it was there that God really began to work in my life. I grew up working with my dad, Bill Duncan Masonry Company.
Yeah.
And was in construction and laying brick and doing all that. And my dad had a great influence in my life as a Christian businessman. And he went on his first mission trip when I was in the 7th grade. And I always remember he went with a group of guys to Honduras to build a church. And I always said I wanted to go on a mission trip and lay blocks is what I've always wanted to do. Well, in 93, Bellevue took a trip to Teofilo Otoni with Wade and Barbara Akins, which you may know them. And it was there that God really showed me that he had a future for me in doing ministry. And so I began to go more and more, and at Bellevue gave us the opportunity to really serve the Lord through missions. And we got real involved in international missions, and we were teaching Sunday school, and I served as a deacon and ended up serving as the missions committee chairman at Bellevue.
Wow. Derek, it's so important. I really believe going back to the church, of course, we're mandated, to go into all the world. That's the commission of the church, to preach, teach the gospel, baptize in the name of the Father and Son and the Holy Spirit. And we know Matthew 28 that gives that instruction. And so that's what we're supposed to do as a
Mm.
church. And so I like what you're saying here, the season of and the environment that you were in of missions. So important. When I was back in Bible college here in Memphis, there were always missionaries coming and
Oh,
sharing their
yeah.
stories, and so for young people and for anybody actually
Yeah.
to be around that is so vital. And that's really how my wife and I got interested in
Mhm.
Trans World Radio, because
Yeah.
it was connected to the type of interest I had.
Yeah.
And isn't it neat how God uses those things that we connect with
Right.
to
To connect us to the ministry,
yeah,
to serve him more.
yeah.
And you realize how important it is as a parent to lead your children in the ways of the Lord. And I see how my great great grandparents led great grandparents and parents, and now me, and now my kids and grandkids. And it's a generational effect to follow the Lord and to know that what you're doing has impact for generations to come. And it's so important that we do that as parents and lead the way.
One of the places that you've been in South America, I noticed, was Nicaragua. And I was excited about that because my son went with the singles ministry at Bellevue several years back
Hmm.
and fell in love with his translator, got married, lived there for a couple of years, and we had
Oh,
the privilege
nice.
of moving. They actually live here now.
Oh,
And so I have a heart for Nicaragua,
nice.
having met the people and
Hmm.
seen the country. So tell me about what you did there.
So, well, in Nicaragua, I've only been to Nicaragua once. We went with Bellevue. We built a church way out in the countryside outside of Managua. And we went as a group there. My son actually went with me on that trip. And I think, though, however, we spent the most time split between Brazil and Uruguay. And so a lot of construction at the beginning of my season of ministry in South America. But as the time went on, we became involved in doing the Passion Play down in Uruguay uh,
With Dr.
with
Whitmire.
Dr. Whitmire.
Well, he was just in the studio the other day,
Oh,
and that
was he?
program's going to air real soon here.
Yeah.
He and Luke Whitmire. I think Luke played
Yes, he
Christ
did. And so we had a dream and a vision of being able to take that. Talked with Brother Jim about it, and he also had that same vision of being able to take the Passion Play to South America. And we just teamed up, Dana, my wife, and I, and Brother Jim, and a missionary named Chris Ingram, who since has passed away. But we took that Passion Play to South America, down to Uruguay, many times, and it continues to be done now with the nationals there in Uruguay. So
wow.
God has really blessed the work that we've seen, and it just has so motivated us to even want to do more for the Lord.
Talk about this transition, because this is the early days of construction that
Mhm.
you were talking about, laying the bricks. By the way, I've always been an admirer of bricklayers. I think it's a pretty neat art and skill to be able to do that. But you went to seminary.
Yeah, went to Mid America. We thought we were going to be missionaries in South America, so I was on a career missionary path to go and find a career, secular job in a ministry field. And we were thinking South America. So went to Mid America, studied there for about a year and a half. And we tried to pursue that as through the International Mission Board, but God had shut those doors. We began to just say, well, if that's not what we're supposed to do, we're going to keep serving the Lord and be faithful to what He's put before us. And as time went on, we felt that God was definitely calling us to full-time ministry. So we began to look and think about, is it as a missions pastor somewhere? And we waited and waited and waited, and God never opened those doors. And then Brother Steve Markham told me about some training in Nashville for directors of missions, and I didn't really understand what that job was about. But I went to the training, and while I was there, somebody was speaking about directors of missions for associations in the Southern Baptist Convention and what that role was. But a man was speaking, and he said, "What we need is we need people that are willing to go and plant churches in hard to plant places." And it was just something that day that just spoke right to my heart, that God was showing me that I've always been about the work of doing the hard things and, investing my life and being willing to persevere through difficulties and seeing that God has purpose in that. And so I called my wife, Dana, from Nashville, and I said, I think we're supposed to go plant a church in a hard place to plant a church. I'm not sure where that is, but what do you think? And Dana just instantly said, I think you're right. Let's do it. So I never went back to the meeting. I just left. They're probably still looking for me. But I left there, drove back to Memphis, and we immediately began searching where that would be. And I remember Mid America, Dr. Gray Allison. Um, I took his personal evangelism class, and it had such a huge impact in my life that really, really gave me passion for souls to share my faith and lead people to Jesus. And I remember in that class him talking about how the Northeast was lost and how New York was lost, and it just really impacted me. And Bellevue had helped plant a couple churches in New York, and we began to look closer, and we found this place on the map called Poughkeepsie, and more specifically Arlington, which is in LaGrangeville, New York. And it was in this place that when we went to see what it was like, we knew instantly that this was the place that God had for us. And even though I had never planted a church, I'd never pastored a church, um, I had never done anything like that. I knew how to lay brick, and I could lead a mission team, and I could share my faith. But I knew that whatever God called me to do, that He would equip me and enable me to do whatever it was that I needed, and that He
Yes.
would provide for us in whatever way it was.
Well, Derek, in comparison, you talk about laying bricks. Bricks are like souls, really, because they put them together and it builds this incredible kingdom that
Yeah.
God is, seeking. He's
One brick at a time.
exactly. Well, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine when you go to an area. I mean, being a Southern boy and going up,
Oh,
up
yeah.
north. I mean, what were some of the challenges
Wow.
that you had?
It was overwhelming at first because I was a little, there was some timidity and thinking, well, they don't want to talk to a Southerner because we talk funny, first of all.
Yeah.
And when we left here, we kind of looked like the Beverly Hillbillies heading north because it was a pickup truck and a trailer and, pickup truck full of tools. And, it was different. But what I really noticed once we arrived, New Yorkers get a bad rap being don't have time for people. They
And we have misconceptions here too. I mean, we think New York, we think of the big city.
yes,
But we're not talking big
No,
city,
we're
New York
not
City
in-
here.
yeah, we're north of New York City, and it's a lot. It reminds me of East Tennessee in a lot of ways.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. The fishing's really good. I'm
Yeah.
not going to kid you there.
Have you got the
Oh yeah,
expert to fly fishing?
I have been fly fishing for the last 2 years, and
Oh, my.
I'm hooked. I
Oh,
wished
my.
I had done it sooner.
I got to come visit you.
It is the place to go. We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, another show maybe.
The fishing's good, not just the trout, but also people.
Yeah.
So what I noticed about that I thought would be a hindrance to us, like even our accent stands out, and so every conversation goes something like this. So you're not from around here. Where are you from? And I'll say Memphis, and they'll say Memphis. What brought you here? And I always get to say, well, we're here planting a church, and we get to. It always goes that way. It still does here 10 years later.
Wow.
At times I feel like I've lost my accent, but they quickly remind me that no, you still have your Memphis accent.
Well, when you first started talking, when I met you, because we just met just a few moments ago, I picked up a little hint of you being from around the northern area.
Well,
but as you've been talking,
it comes back.
We're brothers,
Well, when I first got there, I needed to find a job. And there's a Christian radio network.
And can we stop a second, because I want our listeners to kind of understand this. I mean, when you talk about planting a church, I mean you're building from nothing,
right?
And
Nothing.
so you don't have an income, you don't have a ministry yet. I mean, you're just starting. You're trying to provide for your family too.
Yeah. I felt like we were running for our life. We gave up a family business here. We left all our friends, our church, the security of what we had. My kids, my daughter left First Assembly Christian School going into the 11th grade. My son left Nashville in college to come with us, pursuing a music career. And Dana had a great job at FACS as a marching band director over there. And we loved it here. We loved our church. We loved our family. My business was good. we were able to do whatever we wanted to do. Life was good, but we weren't where God wanted us to be, and we knew that there was more for us, and we just weren't comfortable doing what we were doing.
Yeah, so I want to stop again there, Derek, if you don't mind, because so many of us, we want to see the whole picture.
Mm,
You were there was a unsettling in your spirit. You knew there was something, even though you had everything that anybody could want. I mean,
right.
you had your own company, kids were doing well in
Yep.
school, your wife had that job. I mean, as a family, things were going well, but there was something inside that was stirring in your
Yeah.
heart that wasn't right.
Right.
And so many of us, we want to see, okay, I'll step out of my comfort and what I have and that good job and everything. If I step out into something equally as good or better.
Hmm.
But when you step out not knowing anything and trusting God that He's leading you to do this.
It was a whole new level of faith for us, and
Yeah.
we didn't know where we were going to live. We didn't know anybody in that county. We had only met one person in the entire county.
So you weren't working with another church in
No,
that county.
Nope. There was only one other Southern Baptist church in the entire county, and it was a small church, and but we didn't know exactly where we would be. So we just packed our stuff up. People thought we were crazy. Some thought we would fail and be back, and some, but I just knew that I knew that I knew that we had to go. And if we had failed in the world's eyes, I knew we would have been a success in God's eyes because we had been obedient to do what He told me to do.
Yes.
So we went. I didn't, it was kind of a joke at first. Well, we're going to be gone for at least a month. We'd get there and we get through a month, and 1 month went by and we made it a month. Let's see if we can make it another month. So
Let's take it a month at a time.
yeah. And so, but as we began to work and seek, God met us the second we drove into town, and put people in our path and connected us with people. And it wasn't long that we had led our first people to Christ and began a Bible study in our home. And it's just been a miraculous story of God's provision and His grace, to see the success in God's eyes of what we've been able to see Him do through a contractor bricklayer that really didn't have a clue what was in store.
I love it. In what specific ways have you seen God bless and provide beyond your expectations?
There's so many.
Because the scripture says He's able to do abundantly more.
Above, beyond all we can ask
Yeah.
or think. And, we, from, the obvious ways of financial provision, I've had a lot of health issues. About 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with a tumor, a carcinoid tumor in my lung. And they were checking a heart issue I had, found this tumor. It's endocrine system tumor. And they had to go in and remove the lower right lobe of my lung. That was about 2 years ago in June. And they had to do chemo after that. And then things were looking good. And about January of last year, the cancer came back. So we had to go back in, the exact same incisions, remove more cancer in my lung. And I went through radiation. And during that time, though, what we've seen God do is God has provided for us with my health. But even more than that, God has grown our church, and we've seen our church go, just amazing what God is doing. People are being saved. The church is
Yes.
growing.
Yes.
We brought in, some may know Kenneth and Grace Ewalt.
I was about to say, I haven't gotten to that part in my notes yet, but Ken Ewalt is my hero.
He's
We'll
amazing.
tell a story about Ken off microphone,
I want to hear it.
but I love Ken Ewalt.
Well, he came and has been serving as our associate pastor about a year and a half now. And when it was just a miracle the way God put us together. And but he came at the time as I was in the midst of what I had going on. I couldn't figure out. We were running about 150 people at our church. I was the only guy on staff trying to raise and grow leaders, and I needed help. And God,
At this time, were you still working too?
no, I had quit working at the
Okay.
radio station, and we had been working full time at the church.
Yeah, when you mentioned a radio station a moment ago, you didn't tell me what you were doing at the radio
Oh,
station.
so I was busy building partnerships with businesses, churches, Christian schools.
So it was a non-com station?
It is.
Okay.
And so we have 13 radio or 13 stations within our network. And
what's the name of the network?
It's called The Sound of Life.
Okay.
And soundoflife.org. They go to the same events you guys go to in Nashville, the Christian.
The NRB.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing ministry because it's been around there for 32 years.
Wow.
And I noticed how God has used Christian radio to help us plant churches. It's softened the people. I believe that God used that Christian radio.
I love the analogy too, because anytime you're looking at a military attack, usually it's always by air first.
I call it air support.
Air support. And, and I also like to look at the radio station as an electronic seed spreader for our farmers out there.
You're right.
Because it throws that seed out there in the hearts of men, women, children.
Yeah.
And that's a great.
Yeah.
I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah. It's been a huge blessing in my life. And when I quit working there, they asked me to come back and serve as a member of the board. And about 2 years ago, I got elected as chairman of the board of directors for the network. So I've been serving in that capacity as a volunteer. And we're just seeing God do great things through that ministry.
Wow.
It's a Christian music, but it is based more on a local level. So we're able to get right on the ground with the churches and
that's awesome.
And encourage them.
I want to go back to something you said. I took a note of. You said pressing through difficulties. And then you talked about this cancer and the reoccurrence of the cancer. And I mean, is it worth it? I mean, all that you've been through, is it worth it?
Yeah. So I've been preaching through the book of James. And if you're familiar,
go ahead.
I want to show you.
Yeah, go ahead, grab it.
God has really spoken to me in the last few weeks, something super specific that I love to share. And listen to this in James 1:12. I just didn't want to mess this up. It says, "Blessed is a man who perseveres under trial. For once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him." Is it worth it? Absolutely. Crown of life is what we get. I think of the eternal life that we're seeing people receive as a result of persevering. I've had thoughts of, as I lead this church and go through these trials, my father passed away back in December. Been through some hard times. My dad and I were super, super close. Had such an impact in my life. My hero. And, there you have these thoughts. I don't want to lead this church into this building program and my health take a turn for the worse. And what happens then, or leave my mom here and, I'm way off in this ministry and I can't be here for my family. There's all those thoughts. And I was like studying for this and, putting my sermons together. And in the midst of that, God just reached out and said, "I want you to persevere right where I've placed you. Do not let up. Do not quit. I didn't call you to quit. I called you to persevere."
Wow.
And if you do that, you'll be blessed. And I just felt like that's a message for everybody because we're all going through something. Dr. Rogers used to say, you're either going into a trial, you're in a trial, or you're coming out of a trial. You're in one of those three places, everybody.
Yeah.
And so, that's where we live. And, when we're doing God's work, he never promised us a rose garden, did he?
He really didn't. I was thinking about in comparison, oftentimes we try to balance, I think, in our life, the difference between if I'm really sold out for Christ, if I really take these places of faith and trust him or go out there or hold on to what I have now, and when we hold tight to what we have now, eventually it's going to be like sand, going through our fingers. It's going to just all be dust and nothing,
Right.
And what's really going to matter is what we do for Christ that's going to last.
Right.
And it's going to be the most impactful,
Yeah.
I mean, the Apostle Paul, I'm sure when he was taking those shipwrecks and beatings and things, I can't imagine. I don't know what I would do.
Yeah.
But, I think when we go through these trials, and as you talked about joy, because you usually don't associate joy with trials, do you?
Yeah. Well, I always say that the world didn't give me joy and the world can't take it away.
Wow.
And so, God, the joy we have comes from the Lord, knowing that we will be complete. And to be complete to me means to be like Jesus. And so I can have joy going through this that God is making me. If I'll allow Him to keep the right attitude and keep doing the right things, that the benefits are going to be eternal. And so I can keep my joy, even in the tough times of going through surgeries and treatments and, the hard times that we all have to face, and so I have joy. I've not lost my joy.
Derek, how can our listeners pray for you, your family, and your ministry?
Awesome. Yeah. So our church has grown, and what we meet in an office plaza, and we've had to expand in that space 3 times. We're out of space. There's no more room to expand. We've been patiently waiting on God to show us where to go next, and we need a permanent place to call home. Um, we're the second Southern Baptist church in this entire county, and we're seeing great things. We've already baptized 6 new believers this year.
Wow.
Last year we had about 25 or so. It seems like God just continues to bring new believers, and we just need a permanent place to call home. About 2 weeks ago, we found some land, about 15 acres, sitting at a major crossroads in our county, right in the heart of it. And we are trying to go through the process of buying this, but to get it approved for the county to let us build a church on it, it's difficult. So we need people praying that God will show favor on us as we go through this process, be able to afford to build this thing and to get it up, and a presence there for Jesus in a community that completely needs Christ.
Yes.
We're less than 4% evangelical. It's in the area of the least Bible-minded communities in our country, and Albany is the first least Bible-minded area in our country, which is just less than an hour away. Our community sits between New York City and Albany. And think about the politicians and what you hear in the news today. We're right in the heart of Chuck Schumer and Gillibrand and AOC and all those people. And we're there trying to proclaim the gospel. So we need people praying that we can have a presence there.
Yes. Derek, this has been great. I appreciate such on a last minute notice that you're willing to come.
Thank you for letting me come.
And share. Hey, listen, you got an open microphone here, especially since you're from the South. You're a fellow radio brother. So, I mean, I've got to let you come on anytime you're in town. So anytime you're back, I'd love to have next time if Dana's with you, we can do it together.
I would love that.
That'd be awesome.
She's been the backbone of everything we do. I so outpunted my coverage when I got her.
Oh, no.
And she has been amazing to support, to give up what she gave up to go do what we're doing.
Wow.
She is such an amazing lady.
Wow.
And I'm gifted and blessed to have her.
No, you are. Well, that's really all the time we have today on this program. If folks want to keep up with your ministry, to know what's going on, pray for you, details, what can they do?
Well, our website is livingwater, the number 4 and the letter u.org, livingwater4u.org, or they could email me at Derek, DEREK, at livingwater4u.org.
Okay, good word. Well, thank you so much for what you're doing for Christ's kingdom. Thanks for sharing with our Bott Radio Network family today.
God bless you.
Well, friends, that's all the time we have on this edition of Mid-South Viewpoint. I do appreciate you stopping by. I'm Byron Tyler. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye. Also want to say thank you to our YouTube viewers right now that have been watching for this past half hour. Listen, this is a great work that God's led Derek and Dana and the team there in New York to do. Be sure and pray for them. Go to that website, get that.
Living Water.
Living Water.
The number 4.
Number 4, and then you. And I think it's just the letter U, right?
The letter U.
Letter U. And check out the website. Great website. I've been there. And also, if you would, subscribe to this channel and share the video too, if you would. Appreciate you stopping by. Thanks so much.